That red apple you're looking at right now, it's not red. The blue sky outside your window isn't blue. The green grass in your yard has no color at all. In fact, nothing in the entire universe has any color whatsoever. Color doesn't exist, not in any objective sense. What you call seeing colors is actually your brain manufacturing a completely artificial experience and convincing you it's real. The electromagnetic radiation bouncing off that apple has no more redness to it than radio waves have music. Your visual system is essentially hallucinating every color you've ever seen and presenting those hallucinations as if they were properties of the external world. This isn't a philosophical argument or a semantic game. This is hardcore physics revealing something deeply unsettling about the nature of perception and reality. When you really understand what's happening when you see color, it becomes clear that your entire visual experience is elaborate fiction created by your brain, and you've been living inside that fiction your whole life without realizing it. Let me show you just how deep this deception goes and why it should completely change how you think about consciousness, perception, and what it means to experience reality. Start with something everyone thinks they understand: light. You flip a switch, light comes on, you see things. Simple. But what is light really? Light is electromagnetic radiation. It's the same fundamental phenomenon as radio waves, microwaves, X-rays, and gamma rays. The only difference is wavelength, the distance between wave crests. Radio waves might have wavelengths of meters or kilometers. Visible light has wavelengths measured in nanometers, billionths of a meter. The electromagnetic spectrum is vast. Radio waves at one end, gamma rays at the other, with everything in between. And somewhere in that enormous spectrum there's a tiny sliver, less than 1% of the total, that humans happen to be able to detect with specialized organs called eyes. Here's the crucial point. Nowhere in the physics of electromagnetic radiation is there anything called color. Light waves have frequency and wavelength and energy, but they don't have redness or blueness or greenness. Those are categories that exist only in conscious experience, not in the physical world. Think about this carefully. A wave of electromagnetic radiation with a wavelength of 700 nanometers hits your eye. Your visual system detects it, processes it, and presents you with the experience of red. But that redness isn't a property of the 700 nanometer wave any more than classical music is a property of radio waves at 101.1 megahertz. The experience of red is something your brain adds to the raw physics. But it gets stranger, because even calling it a 700 nanometer wave is misleading. What's actually happening is more like this. Electrons and atoms get excited by energy and jump to higher orbital levels. When they fall back down, they emit electromagnetic radiation at specific frequencies determined by quantum mechanics. That radiation propagates through space as oscillating electric and magnetic fields. Some of those field oscillations eventually reach your eyeball. No color anywhere in that process, just quantum mechanics and electromagnetic field theory. The color appears only when those field oscillations interact with the molecular machinery in your retina and get converted into neural signals that your brain interprets as color experience. And here's where it becomes truly mind-bending. Your brain doesn't just passively receive color information from the world. It actively constructs color experiences from limited and ambiguous input. Your eye has 3 types of color receptors, called cones. Each type responds to overlapping ranges of wavelengths. When light hits your retina, these 3 cone types send signals to your brain based on how much they're activated. Your brain then takes those 3 numbers, essentially a 3-dimensional coordinate in activation space, and assigns a color experience to it. But here's the problem. There are infinite possible wavelength combinations that can produce the same 3 activation levels. Completely different spectra of light can look identical to you because they happen to tickle your 3 cone types in exactly the same way. This is called metamerism, and it reveals something profound. Color matching is not wavelength matching. Your brain isn't detecting the actual wavelength properties of light. It's creating color categories based on how those wavelengths affect 3 specific detector types. Change the detectors and you change the colors. Most mammals have only 2 types of cones. They can't distinguish red from green the way you do, because they don't have the neural machinery to create that distinction. Some birds have 4 or 5 types of cones. They can see colors that don't exist in your experience, colors you literally cannot imagine because your brain has no way to construct them. Which version is correct? Which colors are real? The answer is none of them. Color is always a construction, always an interpretation, always a brain-generated experience imposed onto physics that contains no color information whatsoever. But the brain's creativity goes far beyond just constructing colors from wavelength information. Your visual system actively edits, interprets, and fabricates color experiences in ways that should disturb you. Look at a white piece of paper under tungsten light, then under fluorescent light, then in sunlight. The paper looks white in all three conditions, but the wavelengths reflecting off that paper are completely different in each case. Tungsten light is yellow-orange, fluorescent light is blue-green, sunlight is roughly balanced. Yet your brain adjusts its color processing to make the paper appear consistently white. This is color constancy, and it means your brain is constantly lying to you about the wavelength composition of light. It takes the actual wavelength information and systematically distorts it to create the illusion of stable color properties in objects. You're not seeing the light that's actually entering your eyes. You're seeing your brain's edited interpretation of that light. The same object can literally be sending completely different wavelengths to your eye under different lighting conditions, but your brain manufactures the same color experience. Your visual system has decided that maintaining the illusion of consistent object colors is more useful than accurately reporting wavelength information. But it gets even more manipulative. Your brain doesn't just adjust for lighting conditions. It fills in colors that aren't there, suppresses colors that are there, and creates color experiences based on context and expectation, rather than wavelength data. Stare at a red square for 30 seconds, then look at a white wall. You'll see a green after image, but there's no green light coming from that wall. Your brain is manufacturing green experience to compensate for the red detecting cells that got fatigued from staring at the red square. You're literally seeing a color that doesn't exist, created entirely by your neural processing. Or consider color spreading effects. Draw a black grid and fill some squares with red dots. The black lines will appear slightly red even though they're pure black. Your brain bleeds color from the dots into the adjacent areas, creating color experiences that have no basis in the wavelength information reaching your eyes. These aren't quirks or failures of the visual system. They're features. Your brain actively constructs color experiences that it considers more useful than accurate wavelength reporting. It prioritizes creating a coherent, predictable visual world over giving you direct access to the physical properties of light. And this raises a terrifying question. If your brain is systematically lying to you about something as basic as color, what else is it lying about? The answer is everything. Every aspect of your visual experience is constructed, interpreted, and fabricated by your neural processing. You never see the world directly. You only see your brain's heavily edited interpretation of fragmentary and ambiguous sensory data. Take motion. You think you see things moving smoothly through space, but your eyes actually make jerky movements called saccades, several times per second. During saccades, you're functionally blind. Your brain edits out those blind periods and stitches together the disconnected glimpses into the illusion of smooth visual experience. You're seeing a brain-generated movie, not continuous reality. Or consider peripheral vision. You feel like you can see clearly across your entire visual field. But actually, you can only see sharp details in a tiny area at the center of your vision. Everything else is blurry and colorless. Your brain fills in that peripheral area with predicted details based on memory and context. Most of what you think you're seeing in your peripheral vision is actually fabricated by your visual system. Even more disturbing, you have a blind spot in each eye where the optic nerve connects to the retina. No photoreceptors there, so no visual information. But you never notice these blind spots because your brain fills them in with surrounding patterns. You're walking around with holes in your visual field that your brain covers up so well you don't even know they exist. The cumulative effect of all this processing is that your visual experience is almost entirely constructed by your brain rather than determined by the light entering your eyes. You're not seeing the world, you're experiencing a brain-generated virtual reality that's only loosely based on electromagnetic radiation patterns. And color is perhaps the most dramatic example of this construction process. Colors don't exist in the physics, they exist only in the neural processing. They're not properties of light or objects, they're properties of consciousness. This means that the rich, vivid world of color that seems so obviously real, so undeniably part of external reality, exists only inside your head. The sunset isn't actually orange and red. The ocean isn't actually blue. That traffic light isn't actually green. These are experiences your brain creates and projects onto a colorless universe. When you look at a rainbow, you're not seeing the colors in the light. You're seeing your brain's interpretation of different wavelengths. The rainbow exists as a color experience only because you have the specific neural machinery to construct that experience. Change the machinery and the colors change. Remove the machinery and the colors disappear entirely, even though the light remains. But here's the most unsettling implication. If colors exist only in consciousness, and if your experience of colors is vivid and immediate and undeniable, then consciousness must be doing something very strange. It's not just passively receiving information from the world. It's actively creating experiences and presenting them as if they were properties of external reality. Your brain takes colorless electromagnetic radiation and somehow transforms it into the lived experience of redness, blueness, greenness. But how? How does neural processing create the subjective experience of color? How do patterns of electrical activity in your brain give rise to the qualitative, phenomenal experience of seeing red? This is called the hard problem of consciousness, and nobody has any idea how to solve it. We can explain the neural mechanisms of color processing. We can map which brain areas are active when you see different colors. We can even predict which colors you'll experience based on the wavelengths entering your eyes. But we cannot explain why there's any subjective experience at all. Why isn't color processing just unconscious information processing, like a computer analyzing wavelength data? Why is there something it's like to see red? Why does the subjective experience exist in addition to the neural processing? The fact that colors don't exist in physics but do exist in experience reveals something profound about the nature of consciousness. It's not just detecting reality, it's creating reality. At least it's creating the reality you experience. The world of your conscious experience, full of colors and sounds and smells and textures, is not the world of physics. It's a brain-generated simulation. And if that's true for color, it might be true for everything else. The sounds you hear, the textures you feel, the taste you experience. All of these might be brain-generated constructions rather than direct perceptions of physical properties. Your entire experienced reality might be a simulation running in your neural hardware. This doesn't mean the external world doesn't exist. Electromagnetic radiation is real. Objects reflect and emit radiation at different wavelengths. The physics is solid. But the experienced world, the world of colors and sounds and feelings, that world exists only in consciousness. It's a translation of physics into experience. And the translation process creates properties that don't exist in the original. So when you look at that red apple, remember, you're not seeing the apple as it really is. You're seeing your brain's colorized interpretation of colorless wavelength patterns. The redness is entirely in your head. The apple is just an arrangement of atoms reflecting electromagnetic radiation at frequencies around 700 nanometers. But here's the beautiful paradox. Even though colors don't exist in external reality, they're among the most vivid and immediate aspects of your conscious experience. The redness of red is more undeniably real to you than any physical description of 700 nanometer wavelengths. Your brain's fabricated colors are more convincing than the actual physics, which raises the ultimate question: if your most vivid experiences are brain-generated constructions rather than direct perceptions of reality, then what does it mean to experience anything at all? Are you ever in contact with the world as it really is, or are you permanently trapped inside the elaborate simulation your brain creates for you? The answer to that question might be the most colorful truth of all. You are not seeing reality, you are seeing consciousness. And consciousness, it turns out, is far stranger and more creative than we ever imagined. Every color you've ever seen is proof that your mind is not a passive receiver of information, but an active creator of experienced reality. Consider taste. Sugar molecules have no sweetness any more than light waves have redness. When sugar binds to tongue receptors, your brain interprets the signals as sweet. The sweetness is entirely an interpretation. Sound works the same way. You hear thunder, birds, music, but sound doesn't exist in physics. What exists is air pressure variations. Your ear converts these into neural signals. Your brain converts those into hearing experience. The soundness of sound exists only in consciousness. Touch operates identically. You feel hardness, smoothness, roughness. But these aren't material properties, they're brain experiences when mechanoreceptors detect force patterns. At atomic level, you never touch anything. Electrons repel electrons. Your brain translates field interactions into touching experience. Your entire sensory experience, colors, sounds, tastes, smells, textures, are brain-generated constructions. None exist in physics. They exist only in consciousness. This leads to an unsettling conclusion. You have never experienced the world directly. You've only experienced your brain's translation of physics into consciousness. The world you live in is not outside your head. It's a simulation running in neural hardware. If sensory experiences are brain constructions, what about thoughts, emotions, sense of self? Your thoughts feel like they're about things. But how can neural activity be about anything? Emotions are equally mysterious. When you feel happy or sad, your brain is in neurochemical states. But why do those states feel like anything? Why is there qualitative character to emotions? Even your unified self is likely a construction. You feel like continuous consciousness. But neuroscience suggests consciousness might be a collection of processes, perception, memory, attention, language, emotion, bound into unified experience illusion. This raises the most disturbing possibility. If colors don't exist in physics but seem real in experience, if sounds and tastes and touches are brain constructions, if even thoughts and emotions and self might be neural creations, then what is real? The physics is real: electromagnetic radiation, molecular structures, pressure waves, electrochemical processes, but the experience world, colors and sounds and feelings and thoughts, might be entirely constructed by consciousness from physics' raw materials. You're not living in the physical universe. You're living in consciousness's interpretation of the physical universe. That interpretation is so convincing you mistake it for reality itself. But perhaps that's the point. Consciousness doesn't exist to give accurate physics information. It exists to create meaningful experience from quantum field interactions and molecular dynamics complexity. Colors don't correspond to electromagnetic properties, but they let you navigate your environment in ways wavelength information never could. Sounds don't exist in pressure waves, but they create rich music and communication experiences. Your brain's construction of experienced reality isn't perception failure. It's magnificent creative achievement, transforming abstract physics into lived conscious experience. When you look at that red apple, you're witnessing the universe becoming aware of itself, creating color and meaning from colorless waves and meaningless particles. You're seeing consciousness transforming physics into experience. That red that exists nowhere in physics but everywhere in your experience, that's consciousness announcing its presence, declaring that the universe is not just particles and fields, but something extraordinary. Reality capable of experiencing itself in colors that don't exist anywhere else in the cosmos.